Now it's recording. Okay. Page 662. We had to do number 9. Number 9 said, maybe, x squared minus 14x plus 49. So remember, when you are factoring, you always want to ask yourself, does it fall into a pattern? And is there anything in common with all 3 terms? So looking at this, I can clearly say that there's nothing in common with all 3 terms that I have to pull out. There's nothing in common. So, well, 1 is, but when you were factoring, at this point, we wouldn't have to pull that 1 out. But yes, 1 is always in common. You are right with that. So the second thing is, does it fit one of the patterns? Does it fit your perfect squares or your perfect cubes? So the first thing you have to ask yourself is, the number here is 1 in front of it. Is 1 squared a perfect square? Can I multiply 2 things together to give me that? Yes. What? X. You always look at your last term. Is my last term a perfect square? Is there 2 numbers that I can multiply together to give me 49? 7. Remember the thing it says that it's the same sign and it's squared. It says this, and now I'm going to show you what the rule was. It said that a squared minus 2ab plus b squared is equal to a minus b all squared. Where that middle term comes from and how we have to check to make sure, our last thing we have to do is check the middle term, is you have to multiply them together and double it. So this says to multiply together, and you should get this term. So if I multiply 7 times negative 7, if I multiply x times negative 7 and I double it, do I get this middle term? Yes, because 7 times x is 7, x, and then I double it gives me 14, and it would be negative. So that is my answer. A squared minus b squared. A squared minus b squared. Does this fit one of your patterns? The patterns that I'm talking about are these right here. Is it one of these 5 patterns? A squared minus b squared. It is actually the pattern. So what does that pattern say? It says that a squared minus b squared is equal to, same thing here, we have to do the same thing. So you take the square root of the first, gives you a, the square root of the last, but what the only difference is it says that there are 2 of them. So, and it's 2 of them, and 1 is positive and 1 is negative. A times a gives me a squared. The inners would ab, and negative ab would drop out. B times negative b would be my b squared. So it always can come back. You can always multiply it back to check your answer. But I'm actually going to give you one of these to try from the other section, because they are, or actually we'll jump to, we'll jump to 13 for a second so you can use this thing. 13 uses the same one. 13 says R4S4 minus 81. So I want you to take and look at this. This is the pattern, and I want you to look at this and see what you would have here. So how did I get here from there? What did we have to do? Square root. So what is the square root of r to the 4th, s to the 4th? R squared, yes, R squared S squared. So we have R squared S squared. And what's the square root of 81? 9. We have to have the same thing, R squared S squared, and 9. And then what's my last thing? One's positive, one's negative. Why is one positive, one's negative? Who can tell me why one's positive, one's negative? Because the center term will cancel out. If you don't have one positive, one negative, you would have 3 terms, but we only want 2 terms, so the middle term would cancel out. Let's try one more like that from the your other page, just to make sure. So we'll go. I'll come back to this one. So I want you guys to try. Maybe. I want you to try, this is from page 621, just so you know, but number 9 is the same exact thing. So we have x squared minus 256. So take a second and do that one. That's the problem number. Alright, what's my first step? Square root of what? X squared. So I'm going to take the square root of my first. So that gives me x. Then what do I got to do? Square root of 256. So square root of 256 is 16. What's going to happen next? 1 positive, 1 minus. Alright, going back, hopefully you will recognize this pattern now. So, next back to page 662, number 11. We have number 11 says 4x cubed minus 12x squared minus 28x. So what do you guys think my first step is? Looking at all of those terms, what's your first step always? You always have one step that you have to always do. What's your first question you have to ask yourself? Anything in common. Is there anything in common? 4 what? 4x. So now I go and divide it out. So 4x cubed divided by 4x left me with. Next we have. And then last we have -7. Now, when we get to this part, when we have 3 terms, you always have to do AC. And remember that you're looking for 2 numbers that multiply together that gives you the coefficients of A and C, that when you subtract them, because your C tells you if you subtract or add, so that when you subtract them, you're going to get a -3. So we're going to see if anything works. So what does AC equal? -7. So is there 2 numbers that multiply together to give you -7? So 2 numbers that multiply together to give you 7, that when you subtract them, you get negative 3. So the only numbers that give you 7 is 1 and 7. Do you all agree? Because it's a prime number, that's it. Is there any way I can subtract 1 from 7 to get 3? No. So that is my answer. So you always, at this point, you always have to just make sure that there's no more that it can go. There are times, and on the other page, there are a lot of them that get to this point, and then you can do stuff here. Yes.
But for the AC, wouldn't you times 4 by negative 28?
4 times negative 28. This 4 is on the outside of, because remember that this is already factored out. So this is what we would have had to factor more. So the thing on the outside does not affect A or C. Oh, no, because you already, that's why you pulled out something first. Okay. So then you would factor this if it was possible. Okay. All right? All right, so now we're going to go to number 12. Number 12 says 16m squared minus 88m plus 121. I want you guys to take a moment and see what you think we can do with that. Yep, I'm at 662. This is number 12 and 662. I was only at the other one for one problem. All right. Anybody see what the pattern is? Is 16 a perfect square? Yes. Is 121 a perfect square? Yes. So the thing that I would do first is I would try to see, especially when you have a huge number like 16 and 121, the odds are it's going to be a perfect something because they're not going to give you a huge number to try to factor out. So this is a perfect square. So that tells me, going back to what we did in number problem number 9. So what we did in number 9 is what you have to do here. So now that I told you that, I want you to try to use 12 and still see how we got there. How did we get to our answer? What did we do to get from here to there? So remember, I will tell you on the formula, it says to take the square root of my first number, the square root of my last number, and the same sign as my middle. So I want you to try to do the exact same thing to the 3 there. Alright, by now if you understand it, you should have it done. If you don't, that's okay. We'll walk it through. Nick, what did I say my first step is to get from here to here? What's your first step? Well, we already determined that there was nothing in common and that we have to use this one, and that it's a perfect. So to get from a squared to here, I take the square root of my first number. So what do I have to do? It says that to get from this to here, to get from here to here, I have to take the square root of my first number. So what do I have to do? Square root of 16. So square root of 16 is 4. The square root of m squared is m. Then it tells me I have to do what? I have to take the square root of what? The last number. So I have to take the square root of my last number, which is 11. And it tells me I have to have the same sign here. So I have to have the same sign as the middle number. Now, just so you know where 88 comes from to check your work, how do I check it? Your middle number should always be negative 2AB. Or actually, just you can always just say 2AB. So 2AB. So we have 4 times negative 11 is negative 44 times 2 is negative 88M. So that works out. So we know we did it right. That's our answer. We did we did part of 13. Sorry guys. If you don't have any room, you're gonna have to rewrite just or kind of write it off to the side. Does anybody see right here on 13 what that is? This is a perfect, this is it again, it's the same thing, it's another perfect. So we have to actually go one more step on 13. So we have bringing down my r squared, s squared, plus 9. When I see this pattern, when I have two terms separated by a negative, and they both are perfect squares, what do we have to end up with? What do we have to end up with? Nikki, what do we got to end up with? If I have two perfect squares and it's separated by a negative, what do we have to end up with? We have to end up with two terms multiplied together, one being positive, one being negative, right? How do I get what A and B are? Yep, square root it. So r squared, s squared, square root would be rs. And then I have to take the square root of what? 9, which gives me 3, 1 plus, and 1 minus. Because remember, we are undoing FOIL. So 8, what times what gives me a squared? A, right? But any number, if I say a number times a number gives me that number, that means that that was the square root.
Right.
So we have to, that's why we have to take the square root. So because we're looking for two numbers that when we multiply them together are going to give me this. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply together to give me this, and then two numbers that multiply together to give me that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's why you're taking the square root, because that's how you find the two numbers, because they have to be the same two numbers. Alright, so now back to number 14 then. 14 says 6x squared plus 26x plus 8. First step. What's my first step what's that first question? My first question is, do they have anything in common? So does 6x squared plus 26x plus 8 have anything in common? A 2. So let's pull out that 2. So we have a 2. What's left? 3x squared plus 13x plus 4. Next, my second question would be, since it's squared, is it a perfect square? Does 3 have a square root? No. So now we have to go to my third question, which is AC. So AC, so I'm looking for two numbers that multiply together that gives me 12, that when I add them, because C tells me when I add them, because A times C. So 3, and it's the coefficient. So A and C are coefficients. So 3 times 4 is 12. So 3 times 4 gave me 12. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply together to give me 12, that when I add them, I get 13. Yes, so it's 1 and 12. So now I have to rewrite this using these. So I have 2 on the outside, just bringing it down so I don't forget about my 2. And I'm just working with this. So I'm rewriting it. So I go 3x squared plus 1x plus 12x plus 4. What's my next step? Well, we're undoing FOIL. So we're what? You got to factor each half is right. You got to look to see what does this have in common. So what does that have in common? X is right. So I'm going to bring down that 2 just so I don't forget it. So I have X. What is left? 3x, a 1. Then I have to look to see what does this side have in common? 4. What's left? It better be 3x plus 1, but we'll try it out, make sure. 12x divided by 4 is 3x. 4 divided by 4 is 1. Now I'm looking to see what does this one have in common with this one. It's 3x plus 1. So I'm bringing down that 2 so I don't forget it. So I have 3x plus 1. What do I have left in this term? X. What do I have left in this term? Alright, we're going to go back and you're going to try one now.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
Does it matter when you break it down which one, what, like, mini things you put by the 2? So it doesn't matter if it's like 2, then 3x plus 1, or 2
Are you,
plus 4?
you're saying that can these two be moved?
Yeah.
Yes, they can be moved because remember multiplication is commutative. So you could definitely have that, and you can actually have the 2 on the other side, but because it was already on that side, that's why you always bring it down. But it's commutative, so it wouldn't matter if I said 2 plus 3x plus 1 plus, in actuality, right now, I would never see it, but in actuality, you could put a 2 in between there because that still means multiplication. Because these 3 things are just multiplied together. So the multiplication is commutative. So it would be the same answer. All right, going back to page 621, and I'm going to have you try one just like this one. And number 22. Number 22 is 4x cubed minus 8x squared plus 480x. So this is the same thing, so it's asking you to pull something out in common and then leave it to the front and not worry about it. So I'm actually going to help you figure out what you're pulling out first, and then I'm going to let you try to do the steps. So what do all 3 of those terms have in common?
4x.
4x. So I'm going to pull out a 4x. And remember, this 4x is not going to be in the factoring. So if it confuses you, you can leave it up here and pull it down at the end. Like if it's gonna bother you or on any way of your factoring. So what's left? We have here x squared all right. You guys try to do AC, and if you have to, remember AC is just with this stuff. So if you have to, don't even worry about 4x right now. Just do AC and see if you can find what it is. No, AC you use any time that this isn't a perfect square root. So the reason why I did another one is just to kind of remind us about that. But after this, we can do one that doesn't have a number outside the bracket. But anytime we're left with 3 terms, when we're left with 3 terms and one of them is your x squared, we do AC. And you can think about it being A, because it's ABC, so that's 3 terms, so it has to have 3 terms, and one of the terms has to be squared. That's one way you can always think about when you would use AC. When you have AC means 2 numbers multiplied together. So we're looking for 2 numbers multiplied together. This tells me what I'm going to do. So when I add them together, I can see, when I add them together, it's going to equal what B is. And B is negative 22. So I need 2 numbers that multiply together to give me 120. Then when it's added together, it gives me a negative 22. So if you don't see them all, then you have to write them out. 1 and 122, 2 and 60, 3, and you could just do it in your head too. 3 and 30. Do you know what one it is? Yep, so the numbers are, but you know how to get these numbers, right? So I'm going to tell you what it is. So it's 12 and 10. So 12 and 10 is 120. And you add them together gives you that. So now we'll just work with this part of it. So you bring down your x squared. We write it with this. Yep, because we need it to equal that. So we need it to go back. So you need your x's with it. Yep. Yep, because they have, these two have to equal that. And then it's 12x plus 10. This would be 2. They have to be both negative.
So there's just different if you don't have multiplied out.
No, they have okay, so you can add to the negative. So put plus minus. Put plus minus. No, okay, but
Same like up there also.
when I see this, it's added together. Like, if they're both the same sign, you add them together. So, when I say add them together, it doesn't mean that the signs have to necessarily be negative. Because they have to add together. Negative 12 and negative 10 would be negative 22. That's what I think.
Someone bumped and 3 of the boys jumped down. It was
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're done with this one, you can work on your worksheet. You have lots to be working on.
I guess someone oh boy, called me in work. I guess you and Kobe.
My phone never moved.
I guess all 3 of you jumped on. Now you're suspended for 2 weeks.
Now you look at this.
I'm like,
Look in the comments.
not right. It's been the stupidest
Alright. Ladies and gentlemen, if I'm even thinking about giving you guys an extra day on this, when I stop, I don't want to hear side conversations unless the side conversations are on this. Because if I go to help someone, that doesn't tell you, oh, Miss V is going to help someone, that means I get to talk. I'm saying, Miss V is going to help someone, let me see if I can do this or get help from somebody. Because I can guarantee you somebody around you probably knows what they're doing. And if you understand, then you should be working on that worksheet. Remember? So let's go back through and finish this out. So this 4x is still here, but I just, so that it doesn't confuse you, I'm going to leave it out and we're just going to we're going to pretend that this is just what we're factoring. So AC gives me 120. I have to be able to add 2 numbers together to equal my negative 12 or negative 22. What numbers did you guys find? 10 and 12. So, and they both have to be negative when I rewrite it. So I have x squared minus 10x minus my 12x plus 120. Then I have to see what's my next step. What they have in common. So what does this have in common? X. What do I have left? Minus 10. And then on this one, negative 12. So then I have x minus 10.
Wait, why do you put the X?
What if I pull out a negative 12, what's left? Negative 12x, what's 120 divided by negative 12? Negative 10. So now you have to look at it, what do these two have in common? X minus 10. What is left in this term? What is left in the second term? The only thing left you have to do is remember to bring down that 4x. Alright guys, I have to rest my voice, but I'm gonna no, but I think I have a cough drop in my drawer, but I'm not for sure. But anyways, what I want you to try to do for work for 5 minutes, and then I can try to talk again in a couple minutes, but I want you to try to do these problems. If you I will put the answer key back up, and I want you to try to go back to this page or finish up these ones and see if you can get the answers to the yesterday's homework, and I'll come back and answer from yesterday's homework. Yes, I'm still taping. Yep. When it's a square, it means it's taping. So. But anyways, all right. Yep. Can you what?